What's up, everybody, and welcome to our third C++ programming tutorial delivered to you by Morex Coder. Just a couple of things before we start with this tutorial is that we are changing our compiler, right? I'm no longer going to use the JDoodle compiler that we've been using ever since we started. I am switching to my favorite text editor, which is Vim. I just love coding in Vim. That doesn't mean that you have to use the tool that I'm using to be able to follow through this tutorial. Nope. You can use whatever IDE of your preference. So you can either install a different IDE of your preference on your machine. Just make sure you do have your the G++ compiler installed. I'm going to use the G++ compiler if you are using my Vim, so I'm going to use the G++ compiler to compile my code. But then if you're using an IDE, well, I think it does. Some IDEs, I think they do install, they do have extensions to install necessary tools you need. Just check out some few videos online on how to the best IDEs for C++, and have yourself sorted in terms of that. If you are an online person, you can continue using JDoodle, but then if you figured other online tool that you can use, you can just continue using whatever tool that you want. Like, don't limit yourself to just what gets shown to you. I just used JDoodle. It was just a random tool I found. I was like, okay, let me just use it. And then I used it, but I don't really like the tool because I'm more of a Vim person, right? I'm more of a text editor person. I love my Vim, so that's why I'm shifting from that tool to my tool. I don't want to start with my Vim first because that was going to be a bit more overwhelming for some people who don't really know, who are new, totally new to coding. So I had to just show off some few of the online tools you can use to actually execute your code. Cool. So let's discuss what we'll be talking about in this tutorial. So in this tutorial, we'll be talking about loops. We're going to discuss loops. So the first loop that we're going to have a discussion on is the for loop, followed by the while loop. And then after we've discussed all these loops, we're gonna have a nice exercise. This exercise is gonna actually use the knowledge of the previous lesson, but you guys are gonna get a chance to challenge yourself to applying the new concepts you've learned in this tutorial to solve the same exercise. I'm gonna solve it just using the conditional statements. Then you guys are gonna are gonna go on and learn the loops, right? Learn the new concepts, and then once you've done and you've mastered them and you feel confident about these four loops, the for loop and the while loop, what they are, and do also get to discuss among yourself as to what is it that makes want to use a for loop, or what condition or in what scenario would I use a while loop, right? If you're learning as a team, that would be a nice conversation or a nice discussion. If you're alone, then don't worry, you just have to be having a conversation with yourself. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but then it helps. Cool. So let's head over to a for loop. So a for loop, right? So a for loop can be defined as a control flow statement that allows code to be executed a certain number of times. Just mark that part, a certain number of times. So what this really means is that with your for loop, you already know how many times your code is gonna compile, right? So you use a for loop. When would you use a for loop again? I will leave that to you guys to discuss. I already kind of like gave you a hint, but this will make sense when you discuss the while loop as well. So it will come more clearer and clearer in terms of when would you use a for loop and when would you use a while loop. So after you've learned these two loops, you can go and discuss either with someone whom you know that are on this learning journey, or among yourself, or you can also join an online community where there are people learning coding, and then yeah, have a nice conversation about it. When would you use a for loop, and enjoy, right? um cool. So let's just look at the syntax of a for loop. So you start with the keyword for, right? And then you're gonna have an open parenthesis. Then you have statement one. So this statement is actually an initialization statement. You're gonna have a variable that is of this for loop scope. So what does this mean? That means that that variable is only valid or visible, or it only exists, or it has been declared within this for loop only. Outside this for loop, you cannot use the variable, right? And then we go to the second statement, which is a condition. So this is the condition for your loop. So this is where you determine how many times you want your loop to execute. And then statement 3, this is where you increment a variable that was used in the second statement, because that variable has to change in order for the loop to execute exactly that specified number of times, right? You use statement 3. And then you're gonna have a few programming statements inside your for loop. So these statements, you can also involve conditional statements inside your for loop. Maybe for instance, I think we did an example where we check if a number is an even number or not, right? So you can have that there, and then you have maybe this for loop just counts from 1 to 100, and then what you want to do is you want to print only even numbers or odd numbers. It depends on you. I was gonna say you can also create list of even numbers and odd numbers, but that will come after we have discussed the topic of arrays. So we're not yet there into data structures, but we're gonna get there soon. And then you close your loop. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a for loop, right? But now let's see this into practicality and see how it actually is on code, right? Because in theory it's simple enough, right? But then you have to fully understand it in code. So let's head over to our terminal. I don't know why I am so excited to be back to Vim. Cool. So what I'm gonna do, right? So before, when we were using JDoodle, or everything was already set up for us, right? This time around, I want us to set up the environment. Okay, actually, we have to set up the environment. I shouldn't say I want us to set up the environment. We have to set up the environment before we start coding. So I'm going to create a directory, mkdir. This is C, pp, C++ tutorial 4. But I have to do something, right? So since this having it's a name that has spaces, because if I create it like this, it's just gonna create different directories, 3 directories. But then this is just for those these are just for those who are interested in learning terminal, because if you're going to use Vim, you have to know how to use a terminal to make your life easy. I mean, imagine you go to your file explorer and then you have to manually create a directory. That's just way too long. Do everything on your terminal. Move files via your terminal. Whatever that you want to do, just do it on your terminal and make it easy, right? As you will see, I'm going to be having a tab for coding, and then I'm going to be having a tab for executing my code. We just have slash. I normally confuse the two. So there's forward slash and there's backslash, right? So I think the first one was the backslash. Okay, I don't know. Let me not even try, because I tend to just confuse the two. But if I'm in a proper setting or in a more of a professional environment, I don't know how, but somehow I am able to fully differentiate the two unconsciously. So I don't know how it happens, but then when it comes to when I'm just presenting, I don't know why I kind of like mess up in that manner. But I guess it's because sometimes is that you don't normally get to use the terms most often. So when you come back and then you're trying to access whatever that you have in your memory, it kind of like gets mixed up along the way. You fetch the right data, but then you say it in a wrong manner, which is just, well, something that happens. Cool. So I'm gonna switch. So this is CD, so this is just changing directory. So you are moving inside that directory, right? And then ls is just gonna list all files that you have. For now we have no file, right? So since this is plus plus tutorial number, oh, it's tutorial number 3, not 4. Okay, okay, don't mind the this tutorial, or we can just do this. So it's sudo move, right? And then I'm just gonna move cpp tutorial 4, and then I have to specify the new name. So cpp 2 tutorial, and then this is 3, right? And then I have that. I just have to provide my password. And what I love about Linux is that it doesn't even show anything when you're providing your password. You just provide the password. If it's correct, it's gonna go through. If not correct, it will tell you that it's correct. It's incorrect, and then we move, right? So we change the name of our directory. So that's why I'm saying it's nice to just use a terminal, because it makes it easy for you to do things. I mean, imagine if I had to literally go to my file explorer, then change the directory. I have to click, then change the directory. Imagine the process. What you can do, something that you can just do within seconds. It takes minutes and minutes to do it, so it's just not nice. But then if you're new, of course, you can start being there. I mean, I started there as well until I learned more effective way. But then this happened when I ventured into the tech world, like learning coding and all that. But okay, let's talk in more of coding, right? So we have no file, right? So we have to create a file. Normally, if you are learning terminal, you could just use touch and then the file name, then the extension. So in this case is .cpp, right? That's what you do. It's not touch, it's touch, but I'm not gonna do that. So with my Vim, let me just clear this terminal first. With my Vim, I just type Vim. So this is me opening Vim, and then I specify the file name. The beauty of this is that if the file name doesn't exist, then you can create a new file just using Vim. So in this case, I'm gonna call this cpp3.cpp. cpp is the extension, so this is the C++ file, and this is my file name, right? Or let's just call it loops, since we're on loops.cpp. Cool. And there we go. Here we are. This is my Vim. We have opened Vim, and then you will see here at the bottom that this is the file name, and then it says it's new. So I have to save this file. I have to write whatever that I'm going to add to this file, and I write it, and then it's going to be saved in the directory that we just created. Cool. So the first thing that you want to do is to switch the mode that you want to so if you want to code, or if you want to edit or put anything inside this file, you have to press I. So you're on edit mode, right? Cool. And you will remember that we have to set up when it comes to C++, and then I did mention that we're going to explain the concepts, and I still mention the same thing, that we're going to explain the concepts. For now, we're just learning what's inside, all the components or the features inside this setup. Then we'll come back to the setup, because the setup can be a bit confusing. But then if you do pay attention to what I say when I'm setting up, you can just keep that in mind, because it will come in handy when we get to explain these concepts. So it's hash include, and then I'm going to include a certain library. It's iostream, right? And then I'm going to use a namespace, a standard namespace, standard. Cool. And then I'm going to have my main method. Upon successful execution will return 0. I will explain why this statement when you come to later stages, because this makes it easy when you do a function, right? So you will see that you're returning an int, right? So this statement should return a data type of that, which is an int. We've discussed data types, and we're gonna further explore those data types as we go further. So you will see how everything gets to fit in together for you to be able to create a real life project or program, right? Cool. So what we're discussing now is just a for loop, right? 2 slashes. Cool. This is a for loop. We don't want that. And then let's define a for loop first, right? So you start with the for keyword, right? And then you will see the color changes, right? This is a keyword. I've mentioned that the keywords have unique colors. So it's for, then I have open and closing parentheses. Then inside I'm gonna have statement number 1, which is a variable declaration. But then if you call from a definition, the definition says your loop runs a certain number of times, meaning that this data type that you're going to be declared here is always an integer. But you can explore and see if you can create something different. It's not always it's not always an integer. You can you can put a condition, maybe a string, and then change that variable inside the for loop. If that variable meets a certain condition, then yeah, you can stop the loop. I've never really tried that, have I? I doubt. I don't remember, because I mostly explore before I do things. So most cases I just tend to explore, and explore. So in this case, this is just int, and we just initialize it to 1. Then it's a semicolon. So this is a statement, right? After that statement, you want to end the statement. Cool. Then the next thing you want to do, you want to have a second condition. Say you just want this loop to iterate 5 times, right? So it's I less or equals to 5. We discussed that in the previous tutorial when we talked about operators. Just as I've said, make sure you understand your previous concepts before you move on, because if you don't, it makes it hard for you to follow through. Cool. After that, we're just gonna have an incrementation. I think we did do this one as well as one of the operators. If not, this is just like adding 1 to that variable. Each and every time it runs, you just add 1 to that variable, right? And then we're gonna open our for loop block, and then inside let's just print the number, right? So it's just I and line, right? So once you're done coding, I haven't forgot about you guys who wanna learn Vim. So you just press escape, and then you switch out of the edit mode, and then you hold shift, and then you press a colon. There you go. And then you want to press W. This is for writing the file, right? And then if you want to exit, which is one thing that most people can't do whenever they switched into Vim, it's quit, right? So you have to use Q for quit, right? You could also just use Q and then quit, right? But then if you didn't want to write this file, you would use an exclamation mark. In this case, I'm just going to write, and you will see that my file has been written, and it's occupying 150 bytes, right? And then I'm gonna go to a new tab where I'm gonna execute my code. So I have where I'm coding, and then I have where I'm executing. So this is where I'm gonna see my output or how my program runs, and then this is where I'm gonna be editing my code. Make sense? Cool. Now you're beginning to see why I love it, right? Not that you could just use Vim only. There's also a nice text editor as well. They call it Nano. It's more like Vim in terms of you have to know some few things of how to switch between modes, save, all that type of thingy. So that's why I love about these text editors, and they are not that simple, and they are not that complicated either or hard to use. they just take one to have to understand some few things, basic things of how they work. I mean, if you truly want to learn something, you have to put in the effort, learn. If you just want easy stuff, then you can choose to go for easy stuff. I mean, nobody's gonna stop you, but then think about how difficult it makes your life. For instance, if I was not using Vim, or if I didn't really, because for myself, I started using Vim and then I knew from the word code that I have to be comfortable with terminal. So I learned all the terminal commands, which made it easy for me to just do all the activities that I want to do. But yeah, enough with me talking, and let's go here. So if I press ls, right, this is one of the terminal commands I've learned as well, which is just listing all the files. You will see that now we have a file, right? So we have set up a file and we have returned to that file. Now we want to execute, right? To execute, it's going to be g++ compiler, and then we provide the name. Cool. So I wanted to use tab to just get to all the files, and then you will see that it has that file as well. So I want to just execute only this file. So it's g++, then the file name, and then I can specify the name of the output. So I'm just gonna see, I'm gonna put an odd flag for output, and then let's just call this Murex, right? And then I do this. The code compiled perfectly. Now I can do this, and this is my executable file. So this is the whole process that happens behind the background, right? So the compiler compiles your code and provides or produces an executable file. Now you just have to execute the file to run your code. So the compiler compiles your code and converts that into an executable file. If I was to take this file and put it on a different computer, it was gonna run. So it has been converted to machine language that is easy to understand in any computer, right? So now all I have to do is just say dot slash and then Murex, right? And then here's my code. And then how my code, or what my code is doing, is just counting from 1 to 5, right? So you initialize it to 1, and then you have a condition that you want it to count up until 5, and then you have a statement that keeps on incrementing by 1, by 1, by 1, by 1, right? And that's what's happening, and that's your for loop. That's basically your for loop. I do hope this wasn't really that complicated, because you can use this for a lot of things. You will see as we get to a part of our list where we have to index to get in to get items of a list, right? You'll see when we get to that part. Yep, we are done with the for loop. Now we're gonna head over back to our slides. We're done with the for loop. Now we're going to discuss a while loop. Cool. There we go. A while loop, right? So a while loop. Again, you get to ask yourself a question: what is a while loop? So a while loop is a control flow statement that allows code to be executed repeatedly based on a given Boolean condition. You see how this one gets to change. It's still a control flow statement, but it executes code based on a given condition. Cool. Let's look at the syntax of this while loop, and after we discuss this, it's gonna start to kick in as to, okay, cool, when I look at this definition and the for loop definition, what do I see that is different, similar? Okay, you can create a table of similarities between a for loop and a while loop, and the difference between the two, right? But at the end of the day, you will be able to see that you can use both these loops any way you want, and you can convert a while loop to a for loop and a for loop to a while loop. You can do that, right? But then when it comes to application, in some cases you want to use a while loop, in some cases you want to use a for loop, because you want to create an effective program that executes faster, of course, and it doesn't waste resources. And then we'll talk about resources at later stage. For instance, we've talked about law, like about int, right? There's long int as well, but then we'll talk about that at a later stage, not now. We don't want to be confusing each other. Hey, cool. So this is syntax. So it's a while loop, and then you have a parenthesis, and then you have condition. So this is the condition that the definition was talking about when it says based on a given Boolean condition. So that condition is of a different data type, and we discussed that in the previous two tutorials. I think it was the very first tutorial. It was a Boolean, right? True or false, right? That's that data type. And then you get to see where you use those different data types, right? You started with just learning those data types, declaring them and displaying them on screen. But now we are getting to a part where we understand how we use those data types. Cool. And then you have statements, right? And then after statements, and then you're going to close your parentheses, right? You're going to close your while loop. And that's the syntax of a while loop. Let's head over to code, and then I'm also going to talk about the other variant of this while loop, which is a do while loop. It's not that complicated. It's still more or less the same, but it's just something that changed. So if you were to define a do while loop, you will say it's a control flow statement that allows code to be executed repeatedly based on a given Boolean condition. But this loop executes at least once, regardless of the condition. It executes at least once, because before it checks the condition of a while loop, it first executes statements. You will see when we get to the coding side, which we're gonna go to now. There we go. And let's switch back to editing mode, and there we go. We have our while loop. Cool. And then how do we define a while loop? We have, okay, let me just to push that return back down there. And then we have while, right? It's a while keyword, and then we have parentheses, and then we have a condition. So say we want to do the same thing as that for loop, count, but then this time around we're gonna count from 100 to 200. Let's just say that way, right? So we're gonna have so we have to have a variable or a number. So we have to declare that variable, but then this time around we're gonna declare it before we declare a variable, before we declare a while loop, and then it's just gonna say a, and then it's equals to. So we wanna start from 100. Let's have a bit of a space there. So it's a less or equals to 200, right? So we wanted to count from 100 to 200, and then we open, and then there we go. We're just gonna display a, right, and line. And the way we want to do this is we also want to have let's just add lines, maybe 2 lines. Cool. And then we display. But no, we don't want to do that there. Let's just do it there. So I just want to separate the output from the for loop and the while loop. So let's just have it there. I did mention last time that you can use an escape character or an end line, and yeah, I will discuss the escape characters very soon, because you just have to do with the case. I see this case. So when I say /n/n, what it does, it goes down, then it goes down, right? You don't mind about the text. This is just this is just it following the rules of coding. But then what it does, it starts from there, right? You just go down, then down. Cool. So that's what we have. We print a, and that's it, right? So escape, shift, colon, and then write. If I don't write, for instance, right, this is as we've added a while loop, right? And then I go back to this condition, right? If I execute this is going to execute the previous one because it has not been updated, because we haven't compiled the new program. Let's clear this, and then we have this. So if you wanna return to the previous commands you run, you just press up arrow and then we'll go back, and then this is what it's gonna do, right? This is me executing a new command. Oh no, the new file that has been updated. Now my output is updated, and then I run this, right? And then you will see that this is my code. But then you will see that this code is just continuing, and continuing and continuing. I'm going to press Ctrl C to break that because I don't want that. So we can agree that we have created a loop that iterates infinitely, so right? That's an infinite loop. Let's go back there. What could be wrong, or what could we have missed to make our loop execute infinitely? Let's break this code down. We declared a variable a is 100, and then we printed two lines, right? And lines just to separate the for loop and the while loop. And then we declared a while loop with a condition that a is less or equals to 200. But remember, we're starting at 100, right? And then you saw that it just kept on printing 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. Cool. But then one thing that is missing is that this variable is not changing. It's just 100. So we have to change this variable so that our loop can execute finally. So how do we do that? Okay, switch to edit mode, and then we're just gonna increment the variable, and that's it. So that's basically what we missed. And then escape, and then we do this, right? We write, and then we go back. I want to show you something cool. So this is executing, right? You can do this, and then you have right. So what happens is that it's gonna compile, then after compiling, it's gonna execute that file. That's basically what your execute button on our JDoodle was doing. It was compiling and executing. So this is what we have. It compiles and executes, so you don't have to execute, and then you will see that it counts. So we have those two lines of ours there that we printed, and then start counting from 100 until 200, and that's a while loop. Let's quickly do the do while loop, and then we're gonna end off this tutorial. Do while loop. Cool. So what a do while loop is exactly what it says. It's do, right? What do you want me to do? I want you to do something. So first let's do this see out. This is so we can separate what the other loops are doing from this one, and we end. There we go. And then it's int b is equals to, we're gonna count from 600 in this case, and then we're gonna end at 700. Cool. So what we're gonna do is I wanna print b and line, and then I wanna increment. If we don't increment, it won't end. And then after that, so this is just how this different loop is, right? So you guessed it, right? It's a do while loop. So where do you put the while? After that block, it's while, and then you provide the condition b is less or equals to 700, and then you provide a semicolon. That is a do while loop. Does that make sense? Surely it's not that confusing, right? And then it's escape colon, then write, and then you write a file, and then you get to see that, oh, now my file is 367 bytes. Cool. Now we're just gonna clear this terminal, and we have ourselves a play button which does everything. Cool. So oh sorry, I shifted. So there we go. So what we have is we have a for loop is there, and then we have that's a while loop, and then there's a do while loop. It starts counting from 600, and then it ends at 700, and that's where we have reached our end of this tutorial. But before that, I mentioned we're gonna solve the exercise, but I think it's better if you guys get to solve the exercise because I will explain what exercise is and what is expected of you, and you guys get to solve the exercise yourself. I think it's way much better that way than me solving, because you don't get to learn while I just solve. But then if you get to have enough time to just solve it yourself, it makes it easy for you to get comfortable with application of these concepts, because it's easy watching someone doing these problems, but then when you do it yourself, it's hard. So I think we're just gonna go with that way that you guys are gonna do the exercise. Just let me know if you manage to solve it, and if not, let's head over to the slides and discuss the exercise that you guys are supposed to do. I think this would be a nice way of doing it, right? Just leaving an exercise at the end for you guys to go through. Cool. So here's an exercise. So create a simple calculator with the following features, right? Adds to numbers, divides to numbers, subtracts to numbers, and multiplies to numbers, right? So this is just a simple calculator you're creating, but then you will notice that we didn't mention as to how you should properly do it, but this is just how the problem is. Now the first thing that you have to determine is, how am I going to start? What do I need? So before I even begin to perform the the features, right? Before I even begin performing the addition, divide, or subtraction, I need two things. I need two numbers. That's number one, right? Then once I have two numbers, I can add the numbers, divide the numbers, subtract the numbers. So what I want you guys to do is to create a calculator that asks the user for two numbers and an operation they want to do. They want to add, they want to divide, subtract, or multiply. So if they select multiply, and then you display the multiplication of the numbers, then you ask again for the two numbers, and so on and so on and so on. So I want you guys to use a for loop or a while loop, right? You can either use a for loop or a while loop. Just do let me know of which loop, or let me just say that to have fun and use whatever loop that you want to use. If you use a for loop, you can say, okay, cool, this calculator of mine is just gonna ask the user for two numbers for a certain number of times, and then I have that, right? And then with the while loop, I'm gonna ask and ask and ask, but then how am I gonna end? So we'll discuss a bit more concepts we need when it comes to loops in the future tutorials. I do hope you guys did enjoy this tutorial, and I do hope that you guys did get to enjoy the new setting that we have of using a different coding environment, except from the JDoodle. I know JDoodle is something that we've been used to, but I just love Vim. Vim makes things much easier, and I get to sweat when I code, not like in the other one. That other one does everything for me, and I just want to do everything myself so that I can further elaborate on what I know, right? But yeah, that's enough for this tutorial, and I do hope that you guys did enjoy. If you like the video, do leave a like. If you have anything to say, any feedback, just leave a comment. And if you are new and you haven't subscribed and you will want to have more of this content, just subscribe and enjoy the code. We shall see each other in the fourth tutorial of C++.